Welcome back, guys. It's Colin with the Sun Pirates TCG, and it's been quite a while since I last uploaded, but we are back with another video, and moreover, it's been a very long time since I've done a One Piece video, but as you can see, we are doing a deck profile on my Crocodile list that I used to get first place at my store championships, which very thematically won the 8-drop prize card Crocodile, as well as this regionals finalist pack. But yeah, shoutouts to Guildhall Anime and Game Lounge for hosting such a great event. This was one of the largest store regionals in the US. I don't know if it was the single largest one in the country, but it was definitely the biggest one in Florida, being a 256-man cap. I believe 181 players showed up for the event, but otherwise we went undefeated after 7 rounds. So I'm super excited to show off the deck, but before we do, remember to like and subscribe, as we'll definitely be having more One Piece content coming up. But without further ado, let's get right into the list. So starting off, we're maxing out on searchers, being 4 copies of Miss Valentine and 4 copies of Disappointed. So top 3 search, top 4 search. Very, very important to have in your opening hand because they also trash the remaining cards that you search with. It's extremely important, very similar to Lucci back in the day, where your trash is like a second hand. So these cards are almost like drawing like 3 or 4 cards in a sense. It might be a bit of exaggeration, but you get what I mean. It's just digging for very specific pieces and just filling up your trash, building it up for Miss All Sunday and Nightmare Luffy. These cards are just so freaking important. I would also add that Miss Valentine would be extra important because she is a body that you can sacrifice for Crocodile. So if you need to shrink something down to 0 cost for a certain card effect, or even more importantly, being able to pop her off early, like even on the first turn of the game, to mill 2 additional cards to fill up your trash is very helpful. But then moving on to the 2 case, we have 4 copies of Miss Wednesday, 4 copies of Miss Merry Christmas, and then 2 copies of Miss Golden Week. Miss Golden Week is definitely the worst of the set, but I think it's pretty necessary to be playing 10 2Ks. I know some people have been cutting this, but I think you do want this sort of density of counter to not take too much damage in the other game in certain matchups like Enel especially. Otherwise, Miss Merry Christmas and Miss Wednesday are very mandatory. Wednesday is so strong in the deck. She combos really well with DOS bonus, being able to pretty much hold down the early game. And then Miss Merry Christmas is almost like a pseudo searcher on turn 1. If you're missing Valentine or Disappointed, you can play her and then use Crocodile to sacrifice her to mill 2 cards and draw a card. Obviously, it's not the best turn 1 play that we have, but it's definitely helpful when we have no other options and we need to start filling up our trash. I would even say that Golden Week does come up for that same reason once in a blue moon as well. Moving on to the 4 drops, we have 4 copies of Mr. 2 Bon Clay, and then 2 copies of Mr. 4 Babe. So I like having this density of 4 drops to have when going second. It's of course the best to play Bon Clay on turn 2 when you're going second and sacrifice him to potentially tag into a 5-drop like DOS bonus, for example. Otherwise, you can even park him, so to speak, on turn 2, just like play him, don't sacrifice him yet, and then next turn you can attack with him and then tag him out with your leader ability. Mr. 4 has also been proven to be very useful going second, and even on 5-Dawn when you're going first, just being able to throw him out early and then potentially fetch back a 2k when you block with him, or even more importantly, if you accidentally mill one of your secret rare crocodiles, you can block with him and then grab back your secret rare so you can start doing the loop. Even in the late game, he has a lot of utility, where if you already have access to your 8-drop crocodile on board, usually your 8-drop is taking up your leader ability every turn, so if you're going to play Miss All Sunday, you have a good target of playing Mr. 4 plus potentially a searcher instead of playing Bon Clay, because like I said, you can't really sacrifice him if you're already sacrificing your crocodile every turn. But then moving on to the 5 drops, we have 7 in total, with 3 Mr. 5 and 4 DOS bonus. DOS bonus is probably the most important one, which is why we play 4 of them. He just holds down the early game really well, even doing something as simple as having your searcher out and then sacrificing it, playing your DOS bonus, resting one of your opponent's early bodies like Holly, for example, and then getting to run it over. Especially in tandem, like I said before, with Miss Wednesday, you can shrink something by 3000 and then really bully an early body. And that combo is made even more consistent when we put Miss All Sunday into the mix. And then Mr. 5 is also very helpful, especially when you tag Bon Clay into him, just being able to dig through your deck, finding specific pieces. And then, of course, just being a 6k blocker, just very useful all around. I would like to have a 4th copy of them if I could, it's just the deck space is really tight, so I'm not sure what exactly I would shave for the 4th copy just yet. And then moving on to the 7 drops, of course we're playing 4 copies of Miss All Sunday. She's arguably, in my opinion, the most important card of the deck. She just provides an absurd amount of value, especially when you play her going first. There are quite a few bread and butter combos you can do with her. So of course, typically you would revive Bon Clay, and then a 1-drop, it's either going to be Valentine or Wednesday most of the time. So you can either bully your opponent's board by using Wednesday plus Bon Clay and then tagging Bon Clay into DOS bonus to rest something, and then shrink it by 3000 and bully it with a DOS bonus and your leader. Or you can go for a big value play where you go Bon Clay plus Valentine, search an additional card off of Valentine, and then tag Bon Clay into Mr. 5 to draw 2 cards, trash 1, and you're left with extra cards in your hand plus a blocker on top of the AK body that you just played. And then, like I said before, if you already have the 8-drop in play and you're committing your leader ability to the 8-drop every turn, you can instead go Sunday into Mr. 4 plus Valentine. You draw an additional card off of Valentine, and then you have Mr. 4 as a blocker that can grab you back either another copy of your Crocodile or just a 2k to stay alive. So there's just so much you can do with the 7-drop. Very similar to Gekomori in the past, this card is just so versatile. Like, there are so many hands that I keep just based on the fact that I see Searcher plus her, because there's just so much you can do. And then for the other 7-drop, it's 4 copies of the Nightmare Luffy from OP15. I think this edition is what really pushed this archetype over the top, as opposed to past formats where Crocodile wasn't seeing very much representation. This card provides a lot of coverage for where Crocodile was kind of faltering in the past. So just the fact that you become a 7k leader is so important against the yellow matchups like Nami and Sky Luffy. This guy's actually basically unkillable in most of the yellow matchups because he's a 17 cost, so there's no real outs to him in Nami unless they like just don up something like a new gate really big to run it over. But again, if you're using your 8-drops to stun their biggest bodies, then they won't have much opportunity to do that. And then in matchups like Sky Luffy, where they're spamming a bunch of 6k bodies, becoming a 7k is very helpful. You know, makes them commit Dawn to climb up to you. And then any 7ks or bigger that they bring out, you stun them with your 8-drop. So it gives them very little opportunity to swing very big at you. Even versus Purple Enel, which could out him potentially with things like Gamma Knife and Mamaragan, it's still very helpful to put him down in the very late game. Usually you try to bait out their shrink and removal through spamming your Miss All Sundays and like having good value cards like your 6k DOS bonuses that were already bullying their board. So after they've kind of gone through the removal and they've gone through a lot of resources, then you can drop Nightmare Luffy in the very end game after you've been spamming a few Crocodiles. And then it becomes too many resources to both deal with this and go for lethal, assuming you have like at least 1 or 2 health left and maybe a ground death held up, right? And then of course we have the linchpin of the deck, which is 4 copies of Crocodile. I think this takes the least amount of explanation for the deck list. He's just really strong, like neutralizing 2 threats every turn. And then every additional copy you play not only still neutralizes 2 threats, but also draws you additional cards. It's just really crazy. And then at some point your endgame will like look like this. Like I've had plenty of endgame boards that just look like 4 Crocodiles and I just like attack for lethal like that. And it's very simple from that point. But otherwise, we have a few events. So we're playing 4 copies of Ground Death. Card's insane, right? We've known it since the Emu days, but it's even stronger in this deck, which is what it was intended for, to use your leader ability to shrink something, and then you can Ground Death it. So you can Ground Death literally any blocker in the game, even a new gate. And then followed by that, we have 3 copies of Patchwork. This is another thing that I almost want 4 copies of. I just don't know what to cut for it, but it's very useful against decks like Lucy or the blue decks that are running new gate like Nami and Ace. You can shrink something down to a 0 cost with your leader after your opponent like used their blocker, and then you patchwork it, you stun it, and then in addition to like the 2 stuns that you've made with your Crocodiles, so you've effectively stunned 3 bodies off of your opponent's board. And if it's a blocker especially that you caught with this, then that blocker doesn't get value for the following turn cycle. So it's just really crazy in the deck. But yeah guys, that's pretty much it for the list. Shoutouts to my boy Ayden, who has also won a Star Regional recently with Crocodiles, and we've actually been working on the list together. So I will also have his Twitter post down in the description below, along with the deck list. But yeah, so as always, thank you all so much for watching. As per usual, remember to like and subscribe. We'll definitely be having more One Piece content coming soon. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one.